Welcome to the Soar podcast, the place for creative entrepreneurs with limitless dreams and unconventional stories. I'm your host, Ray Hyde Cornell, founder and business mentor at Chiron Consulting and CEO and senior copywriter at Cornell Content Marketing. My goal is to bring you stories of what's possible so you can never tell yourself that your dreams are impossible. Today, we have Eric Musick of the Subscription Box Show and Louis and Léa. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm very good. Thanks for asking. And how are you?
I'm great. Thanks. And this is so much fun for me because I've been on your podcast and now I get to have you on mine. So this is great. So tell me about your two businesses. You have the Subscription Box Show podcast and you have a subscription box of your own that you build with your wife.
You're exactly right. So first of all, yes, you have been on our show. You've been on the podcast. So really appreciate you doing there. And we've actually done some other work together. So always appreciate having a chance to talk with you, Ray. But so just quickly, both businesses, the Subscription Box Show is a podcast dedicated to help other people start or grow their own subscription box business. So, I mean, the name is pretty obvious and I think is self-explanatory. And then Louis and Léa is a subscription box for new and expecting moms from birth all the way to the first birthday. So we kind of have a slogan from birth to birthday.
And so you are running two businesses, which is not something that we often see in the entrepreneurial world. And actually, I learned just before we started that you actually have a third. You have a wedding rental company. So you have your hands full.
Yes, we do. Unfortunately, with what's going on in the world, and I don't even dare to say the word, knock on wood, we haven't been able to use the wedding rental line for the last couple of years, especially up here in Canada where things are still pretty much in lockdown. But no, we do have a third business. We have a growing family as well, which is an interesting dynamic within, in the house itself, because we do everything from home still as well.
Okay, so you are working from home. You have baby number 5 on the way. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, man. And then your wife and you work together in all of these businesses.
We do. Yeah. I'm actually looking at her right now as we're doing this interview. I kind of have my section of the office. She has hers. We both have our own strengths. Both obviously more so myself have our own weaknesses, but we work together good as a team. I'm kind of like the A type and she's kind of more the B type. So we complement each other well for sure.
So how did you get into this? What were you doing before the Subscription Box Show, before Louis and Léa? What were you guys doing?
Well, Christine, my wife, Christine, she's a graphic designer. She's been a graphic designer since out of school. She always knew she wanted to be creative and a graphic designer, actually. So right after high school, she went to college for 4 years and studied that and graduated from a well-known graphic design college up here called Red River College. Very hard to get into, and she managed to get in and actually take an additional year and did really well there. So she's been doing that her whole adult life. Myself, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I kind of always winged things. I'm a big dreamer. I just didn't know you could do certain things. Like I grew up in to this day, I'm still in a very small rural town. So we grew up, just kind of blue collared, you work hard, play hard kind of thing. And so after high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I dabbled in university. Up here, we have this thing where before you take courses, you take University 1. Mm-hmm. It gives you a baseline of a bunch of different things. And from there, your second, third, fourth, fifth year, you would kind of major into something. I dropped out of even University 1. I couldn't even finish that because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I went back to working on a farm. I grew up a farm boy. That's what I knew. So working with my hands, getting dirty. And I worked there for 3 years. And then one of my friends, your circle of friends grow up or grow as you keep growing, and met this guy who was in a communications company, which is what he called it, which is just fancy for a cable company. And he says, "Hey, are you sick of working on a farm? You should come work at, in the commercial department. We do we install internet and phone systems and stuff like that, and TV, obviously." So I said, sure. I took an interview, I've never had cable at this point. And it's not like I'm 50 or 60, I'm 39, but I grew up on a farm where it was just like bunny ears, whatever you call it, right? Just to get the reception. So I never even grew up with cable. I was still living at home. And I said, sure, I'll take the interview, but I don't know anything about internet or anything about communications or phone systems, and certainly not cable because I've never had it. So took the interview. Luck would be my future boss ends up being a pig farmer himself, which is what I was doing. So we just never even talked about anything communications. We talked about pig farming, and he knew I was good with tools and working with my hands. He's like, "You'll figure out the rest, Eric. I'm hiring you." So I did that for the next 15 years. And So that's what, to answer your long story short, that's what I did for the next 15 years is I worked with a cable company. I was a cable guy installing internet, whether it was commercial, residential, and I've ended up getting a better position than the salary position, even as high as what we call, it was called a unit-based installer, which we worked piecework. So essentially as good as you could work, as much as you could work, you could make. Obviously there's ceilings, there's only so many hours in a day, but we were making at that point in my last 10 years there, I was making every year over 6 figures as a cable guy, which is pretty decent money, especially up here.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And people don't think of that when they think of a cable guy. So, but it was okay. I mean, my wife was able to work from home, obviously as baby 1, 2, 3. Now she started working from home, doing freelance work, but less because she was being a mom. But with that, I was able to at least provide for my family in a small rural town here where I still live. So that was my former life, right? To put it very longly.
So no, that was the perfect amount of detail. So how did you, I mean, it sounds like you had a really good setup. You had this 6-figure income coming from this position at the cable company. Your wife was able to, decrease how much she was working so that she could take care of your growing family. So what was the tipping point for you? When did you decide to leave the cable company and go out on your own venture?
Yeah. And I know we talked about this off air a little bit, how there's always kind of like these things where it's like an aha moment that happens, right? Well, mine's sort of twofold. So I've always, like I said, been a big dreamer, but again, growing up in a small town as a, rather poorly, might I say, like we were not rich growing up. We didn't have additional income for a lot of things. Never been to Disney World, like all the other kids are doing that kind of thing. So I just thought as long as I could work hard. So this 6-figure job was great for that. I know if I could work hard, I could provide. But deep down, there was like a sense of like, man, life's too short. I've always had this thing where like, I want to have a life with no regret. Life is too short. I don't want to yes, I was making good money, which is relative to some people. It could be very, very poor income for a lot of people, but relatively to around here, it was a pretty good income. But I wasn't happy. I was miserable. I was always angry. I was always upset with things. Things would set me off easily because I didn't like what I did. And I just wanted to be in a position where I don't care if I made a third of what I was making before. I just wanted to wake up excited and happy to do whatever it was, but I didn't know what that was. So from 18 basically till my mid 30s, I struggled just kind of like not knowing what I wanted to do. And it was so frustrating. I wanted to do something. I didn't know what I could do. I didn't have an education. I couldn't just quit that to go back to school. Now I had a family. We had built this amazing house up here. So I was kind of stuck. And so that's the first part of my answer is that I've always wanted more. I just didn't know how to get that. And what I could do, what was possible. And the other part was that my dad died 3 years ago, suddenly from an aneurysm. And that was the ultimate aha moment because it was like, he grew up similar to me, even probably poorer, just worked really hard for us, did what he could, with lack of education, never graduating school, those kind of things. But worked his butt off. And at 63, 2 years before he could retire, he dies from an aneurysm. So
oh my God.
For me, it's just put a really huge perspective on like life's too short. That's it. I'm doing something. So that was kind of like my two moments. And then, as you just keep putting in the hours and you keep grinding through life and through work. I'm like, man, now I'm 35, I'm 36, I'm 37. When is this gonna, like, what can I do? And I'm very faithful Christian. So I pray a lot. And I was like, please God, just give me something, like a breakthrough. Yeah. And this was of course after dad passed. And then about 4 or 5 months after, it was September of 2017 and early 2018, whenever it was, my company that I was working for 15 years, all of a sudden offers us a voluntary buyout. You could take it or you could not take it. But because of, if you're a piece worker, like I was, it was based on your best 3 years of the last 5 years. So it was a really good buyout, and plus based on your 12 prior years. So for me, 15 years and my 3 of my best years, and they give you the next 2 years off, just like sign the papers, take it, and we'll buy you out and you don't work here anymore.
And is that a money saving strategy on their part? So they're higher paying people leave the company and they can bring in people who make less?
100%.
Okay.
100%, because we were making good income. They knew they could bring in other people to make that were making, would make, 40, 50, right, kind of thing, maybe 60, at least half. So for sure, that's what it was. Now they're going to lose some good guys there, but they did trim a lot of fat. And so for a lot of people, they stayed because it's a comfort thing. It's scary. But they only gave us 10 days, which is crazy. So we're like, this is a life-changing decision. It took me like 2 seconds. I was like, this is it for me. Like I'm out. So I took the buyout and I, like you said, I bet on myself. But it was prorated. It was just, everything was perfectly set up. It was prorated 18 months. So I was able to really kind of plan for the next phase. So at first I was like, oh man, another 18 months of this. Like if you might as well have told me 25 years, it just felt like a life sentence. But those 18 months really were a blessing in the end, because it gave us a chance to kind of think about what we wanted to do, how we're going to use this money, and for what.
Yeah. Wow. So you were praying for some sort of sign, some sort of answer, and you got it. I mean, it fell right into your lap. And this is one of those things that I talk a lot with my Chiron people about, which is, when you put your intentions out into the world, when you say, universe, please do this, give me a sign to help me figure out this or this or this, it drops the resources right into your lap when you're clear about it. And that's
when you're clear about it,
and it to you.
It totally 100%. And, but not on my time, if you're Christian, it's on God's time. Yeah. And if you're not a Christian, it's on the universe's time, whatever that is. But for me, it was God's perfect timing. And for me, it was, 20 years too late. I would have rather had this when I was 18. Like some people, they grew up in high school, they know they're going to be a doctor, they go to school, done, or they want to be a business owner. Like for me, it took a lot longer. That was my journey, but I mean, it happened for a reason, the way it happened. Yeah. And I'm happy to be where we're at now. So it all worked out, I guess.
So once you had that opportunity to take the buyout, how did you get to the idea of, we're going to start a subscription box?
Yeah, well, we have this show up here called Dragon's Den. You guys have Shark Tank. It's the same, basically the same show. There's even some of the sharks or dragons that are the same, actually. So, we this is a show we like, and that was kind of like my university, a fun way to learn business stuff. So we really dove into those, and there was this lady on there called Olivia Canlis. She's the founder of Meowbox, and she had a subscription box for cats, and she was looking for funding. I was like, yeah, recurring revenue and all these different things. So we really kind of like that idea. And then when we had baby number 4, we went to the hospital, kind of overconfident, I'd say. We didn't really prepare that much. We kind of just winged it. And when we got there, like, holy cow, we're so unprepared. We didn't have everything we needed. We were calling our parents. Christine was calling her parents. I was calling my mom, like, bring us this, texting them, bring us that. We forgot this. Just a complete gong show. Like, we're just so unprepared. So they're like, oh, man, I wish there was like some kind of subscription for this or some kind of box. And we just kind of, like, Christine was looking for something. She's like, hey, I can't find anything for expecting. Yeah, there was prenatal, bump boxes and sort of things like that, but nothing really for like preparing you for the birth in the first few months after, especially not for the hospital. So actually the idea came right then and there. Christine's like, that's it. We'll have a subscription box for birth. And that was like, we were both like, huh. And that was kind of like, so we kind of like started looking into what was out there for competition, and it was not much. Like you said, she couldn't find anything, and like diving more into it, there was really nothing in that niche. So, and then with the Olivia's story with the subscription box, I loved the reoccurring. So like, we'll make it into quarterly boxes, and we can kind of like market this on a subscription base, so that like the lifetime value will be a lot better. So that is really how the idea came to be. It was that simple.
It's interesting to me that, like so many entrepreneurs that I know, when you were in university, you didn't really fall into it. You didn't fall in love with it. You weren't really on board with, taking all the classes and getting the degree. It just wasn't clicking for you. And then now that now that you have started your subscription box, and when you were in the very beginning, it seemed like you were just a sponge for information, and you were so good at teaching yourself, to the point where now you have a podcast, a separate business that teaches other people how to run their own subscription businesses. And I just found out via our quick little email the other day that you're also running another side business doing consulting for people who want to do podcasts.
That's right. Yeah. So and all those things. Yeah.
You've gone from being kind of that reluctant student in the traditional system, the traditional sense, to now being the like eager student and the teacher in the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah. Isn't it beautiful? I think when you find something you're passionate about, it's pretty easy, right? It doesn't feel like work. It's like the old saying, I'm going to butcher it, but if you find, if you love what you do, you don't never work a day in your life or whatnot, right? Exactly. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to listening, learning. I was never, couldn't care less about calculus and all that stuff. Like for me, and that's why I knew, I'm like, I'm just wasting my time here. Like, I'm going to waste some money. Let me just drop out now, work, and I'll just kind of figure it out. And that that came a lot, like I said, later in life. But I think when you find something you care about or you're passionate about, maybe it's something for you, maybe it's a side hustle, but whatever it is, it's a lot easier. And it's not even work. You just want to learn more about it. You can't wait to get back. For me, those next 18 months, podcasts, like that was my university on wheels. I went from listening to music all the time to listening to, or I would listen to sports radio. I love sports. I'm a huge sportsaholic for sure. To a fault, but it was a big sacrifice even to cut music and that to just like, listen to podcasts on business. And all of a sudden I fell in love with business podcasts. And I couldn't wait to get to my university on wheels. I get in my van, put on my earbuds and let's go. And I'd stop at my next job and sometimes would sit there for 10 minutes to finish. And I had like sticky notes everywhere and notepads full of stuff. And it was just a great 18 months of really learning. It was, and again, that was a blessing in disguise because I learned a lot in those 18 months in those van rides, driving around rural Manitoba here.
I love that. University on wheels. I love that. So what were some of your favorite business resources, business podcasts when you were getting started?
Yeah, I think there's levels or layers, right? Like I think when you start, you're going to listen to some and you might evolve to others, but the ones that stick out to me when I really started, like the one that set it all off was Entrepreneurs on Fire. And you know how I came about it was very simple. I just Googled business podcasts and EO Fire happened to come up. And I started listening to John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneurs on Fire. And I still listen to it once in a while here. Travis Chappell's Build Your Network was a huge one. So funny story on that. So I emailed John Lee Dumas. I'm a big fan of his. I'm a fanboy. And I emailed him saying, hey, John, that's it. I got these, I kind of told my situation. I said, I need to learn. I want to learn from you. I want you to coach me and this and that. And just like, kind of like, I'll pay you whatever, just, coach me kind of thing. And he emailed me back saying, I don't do that anymore, but I know someone who is that I coached myself and his name is Travis Chappell. And he puts me in touch with Travis. So I start listening to his stuff, like just eating everything up that he would put. He had courses, he had like digital courses, his podcast, he eventually had a VIP day. He even had his first function, which is like, a lot of famous people came and spoke to, and I went to all of them. Wow. So, but yeah, I think those two were huge for me. Tom Bilyeu, your typical ones. I'm trying to think here. Some of them I don't listen to anymore, so they're escaping my mind. But yeah, I think when it comes to podcasts, I think the big ones that you typically would think of is the ones I was listening to for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is so interesting about your story is I feel like you made all of these decisions based on your intuition, based on your gut instinct, you and Christine together. I mean, from getting offered the buyout to being in the hospital and then having that epiphany moment of, oh, this is what our box is going to be. And then, really devouring all the content that you could, and then to starting your own podcast. I feel like you really have that, I'm going to take a leap of faith kind of mentality now that you're out of that traditional employment setting. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, for sure. I've always been, I'm risk averse for sure, but I'm also, again, I've always had this big dream, like, I'm a lot of people around here. I'm not too sure where it is where you are, if you're in a small town, but a lot of small towns have this kind of like middle-class mentality, right? Where it's just like, just work your job and, stop, that's for TV shows. That's not for us. I'm like, why not? So I think some people just have that. And I think a couple of things help with that. Business books for sure. At some point in my mid-20s, I got briefly into an MLM and got introduced to some business books that I had never heard of, Magic of Thinking Big, those kind of things. So those, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like all these books kind of like opened up a new world. So this MLM was short-lived and it didn't work out for me. But that being said, it did open up a whole new world of like, there is a possibility. Like I had never heard of this stuff. Like this was like unheard of for me. I didn't even know this was possible. So I think that opened up a thing. And I really got it, as I was listening to podcasts, I listened to a ton of books or read a ton of books. I prefer reading the books than to listen to them. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not a big, I don't think I retain as well. Like I listen to podcasts, but yeah, I know a lot of people, I think more people listen to books now than they do read them. But
well, and especially people who are fans of podcasts. So that's what surprised me, that I know you were devouring all of these podcasts and then to hear that you're not a fan of audiobooks. That's interesting.
Well, it's not that I'm not a fan of, I just appreciate more reading the book and not like
Okay.
a physical book. Like I like having a physical book, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not too sure why that is. And this,
Mhm.
like I hear people like they'll read it on or listen to shows or books or podcasts on like 3x or 2x. I'm like, how is that even possible? I've tried once at like 1.5. I'm like, nope, that's too fast. Like
Yeah.
rewind. But yeah, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Like,
That's okay.
yeah.
That's okay. So one of the things that I thought was interesting that you said was that you're pretty risk averse, where actually one of our previous guests on the show said that in his opinion, entrepreneurs have to be risk takers. So how do those two things coexist? You said you're risk averse and yet you're following this very gut instinct, like make sure our quality of life is at the forefront of everything that we do, make sure our family is top priority as opposed to, appeasing the 8 to 5 gods. So how do those things coexist?
Well, to go back to my point of being risk averse, that's why when I was 38 or 37 when I finally did this, right? Like it took me a long time. It took something to kind of like really push me out of my comfort zone. It wasn't where I was well aware of my situation with my family and our house. I'm like, okay, well, yes, I could, I was trying to think of ways to, drum up, side business maybe, but how do you find the funding? And then I didn't have the expertise, and it took something quite literally, two things: the death of my father, which is significant, obviously, and a buyout from a company you thought you might have been there forever. I didn't want to, but I mean, I was probably going to be okay with it unless something like that would have happened. So, two major things happened. All of a sudden, it puts a lot of perspective where you can, you know what? Now I'm able to take that risk, and I just had to buy my time. And I think if you're out there listening, sometimes it's just a matter of being aware. And I now know I would have done things maybe differently to kind of speed up the process. But it happened again for a reason that way. But knowing what I know now, I would say if you're looking to speed up the process, is to just, I didn't know what I wanted to do. That was the biggest problem. Is to just try different things. And I think don't be scared of trying things. Like go and join a mastermind, go to a conference, shake some hands, travel, whatever it looks like for you. If you're single or married, you can still do these things. If you're single, sure, you can travel. If you're married and you have kids, you can still go to conferences and go and shake hands, and it might open up your eyes and might say, you know what, that's not it. And you go to a different conference and just try different things. I think will speed up that process significantly to try new things. For me, it happened to be catching a show on Dragon's Den, but I wish I could go back in my late 20s, and just start going to these different things to just kind of speed up that process.
Yeah. And I think, I say this a lot to my Chiron folks, which is that sometimes there are lessons in life that we have to learn before we're ready to do whatever it is we're really going to do with our lives. And sometimes those lessons hit us really early in life. Sometimes they hit us again and again and again and again because we don't learn the lesson that we're meant to learn. And in your case, it sounds like you needed that buyout from that company. You needed to invest the time. You needed that buyout in order to fund this new venture, which came at when you were personally at the right time as well. So, for anyone who is kicking themselves because they're looking at the people who've been a freelancer or an entrepreneur since they were 17, 18, 19 years old, that's that person's journey. But everyone has a different timeline, and it has to happen when it's right for you. Even if you're 40, 50, 60, it doesn't matter. When you're ready to make the choice, when you're ready to make the switch, that's when it happens.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of things play into that, right? Maybe your family situation, maybe where you grew up. Did you, silver spoon? Did you grow up poor?
Yeah.
Did you grow up in an affluent neighborhood? Did you grow up like these things all played a huge part in like my slower development, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. And it might be 38. It could be 58 for someone else, but there's no right or wrong time. The old saying, I hate using cliche sayings like this, but the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. The second best time is now. So I think you can always start. And, but there are ways, I definitely, like I said, that you can speed things up now if you really want to. And you often hear, I don't know if you like, time excuses, but I'm pretty busy, that. And one thing I can't stand is people say I don't have time, because I guarantee you, I always say this to anyone when it comes to either some of my consulting stuff, my coaching stuff, or even on the show, I can guarantee you I can find time in your life. You know, because some people are putting, you do the things you want to do, whether that's, you know, binging on a Netflix show, when you're just driving to the supermarket or whatever you're doing. These are little times where if you just put a little bit of preparation in, rather than just turning on the radio, which is easy, you can have a podcast in your ear, whether, you know, if you're cutting the grass or whatever you're doing, there's little times where you can, you know, you can find it to slip in some time to learn or, you know, explore a new skill, whatever it is, but there's always time, no doubt.
It's always about it. It's a choice. And there's a workshop that we
exactly.
do. Yeah, our Energy Aligned Success Schedule workshop at Chiron, where we actually look at how are you spending your time? What do you actually want to be taking up your time? Where does that fit into your weekly schedule? And when people just go through life not actually looking at how they're spending their time, well, that's when it all just evaporates and falls through your fingers like sand. You don't have the awareness around what's really draining that time from your life. And so you can't make the choice. But once you have that clarity of, oh shit, I actually am spending, you know, 8 hours a week binging Netflix. Well, that's a whole work day worth of time that you can spend toward growing yourself, developing yourself. And if it's, you know, oh, there's always the excuse of, well, I'm tired at that time, or I just want to turn my brain off. Well, then that means you're spending your days doing the wrong thing. It's all connected, and really getting mastery over that time opens the doors to be able to do anything.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, well, I don't watch Netflix. Well, you probably on your phone at some point looking at, you know, getting lost in social media. So, I mean, there's just a lot of time hacks for sure. And tiredness, guess what? Like, get used to it because, people are tired when you're, in the beginning, you might have to burn the candle at both ends. But here's the good news. If you do it right and you take care of yourself, obviously, and all these different things, it's not forever. And that's the thing people don't realize is that you build the business so you can have a better lifestyle, not so you can have a worse one. So, but I love what you guys are doing. Yeah. To find the time like that is a great exercise. So good on you guys for exposing and exploring that further.
Yeah, thanks. And you mentioned there are ways to speed up the process. What are some of your favorites?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here, but yeah, I think,
Sorry.
I think listening to new things, trying new things, and just in general, I think a couple of them is trying new things. So you've never went ziplining, go ziplining. Like why, Eric? Why ziplining? Well, you might meet someone there. You go out for lunch alone all the time, or with coworkers all the time to this specific place. Go alone to a new place. You might meet someone. Go and try to have coffee elsewhere. Just go and do new things. Like I said, conferences and trade shows. Go to a farmer's market instead of the supermarket. Little things might open up your mind. Never thought of playing a new sport. Try that sport. You might meet someone there, going for drinks after, and that just might open up a new connection, a new whole new world into something. Just getting out there and doing something different, I think, just to kind of like rock you out of you're not necessarily leaving your comfort, just like you're stuck in this spot and you need to get, unstuck. We all know the definition of insanity, right? So, I mean, you need to do something different. And I think there's multiple ways of doing that, but I think, those are kind of the top ones I would say. Or, even something as simple as, instead of listening to the radio every time you're in the car, listen to a podcast, explore a new podcast. It might give you an idea. They might be talking about something one day. Just instead of scrolling your social media before going to bed, read a business book. Just do something different. I think those are good ways to kind of like speed up the process. It will for sure speed up the process, no doubt.
And to your point about making new connections at events, or, when you try a new restaurant or try a new coffee place or play a new sport, it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to go into communities. I mean, you have your Subscription Box Show Facebook group, for example, for new subscription box owners. That's the place. Those are the places, these little communities online where you go in and it's okay to say, I have no idea what I'm doing. Help. I need help with my pricing, with my packages, with my services, with my clients, with my time schedule. I have no idea. I'm so lost. I'm so stuck. Help. Because people want to be helpful, especially in our entrepreneurial world. And that's not something that's common to the traditional employment world, where it's really dog eat dog and there's this competitive ladder. In the entrepreneurial world, I mean, at least from my perspective, the people that I tend to work with, we all see each other as colleagues and associates, but not competition, even if we're doing the exact same thing. I can't tell you how many content marketing agency owners I'm friends with, and we refer work to each other, or I even write content for their businesses and they do some design or ad work for our business. I mean, it's also collaborative when you surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah. And that's a huge shock, right? When you come out of the 9 to 5 world, I think, like you said, it is dog eat dog and it's competitive. It's all about, competition. Whereas I think when you quickly find out in the entrepreneurial space, it's all about abundance mindset versus scarcity mindset, right? And that's kind of like that was a huge, huge moment of like, well, hold on here, but this is my competition though, right? And like, no, it's like an abundance mindset and the law of reciprocity, all these things, it comes back to you tenfold. Just don't expect anything in return. Always add value to others. Like these are just little things you learn by associating yourself with these people. But yeah, I think networks and connections, and putting yourself in uncomfortable positions is good, especially when you're like my age, when I was, getting into this, and even at 37, 36 years old, you're locked into some pretty good, old habits there. And I think it's tough to get out of that. And it's tough to even start learning again. Mm-hmm. But if you're in the right spot, it's fun. And I think it's a challenge to yourself, and you just got to then kind of change that mindset, little tweaks, changing the right mindset and doing the right things to, push yourself into that uncomfortable zone, which will ultimately open doors, no doubt.
Yeah. Did it help having Christine in your life and so involved in the business you guys were building together? Did it help that she had prior freelance experience?
Oh, for sure. Like Christine, she grew up entrepreneurial. I would say she kind of, her dad had his own business, successful landscaping business. Her mom's like, worked at a bank. She was good with numbers and stuff. And Christine was never scared of being an entrepreneur or starting her own business. That was more me. So that for sure helped. And just again, being two different types of people really helped. Like I was like, okay, let's just launch and get, and she's like, oh, slow down. Like, we got to still kind of look at things and be prepared and organized. Cause if it was up to me, sometimes I can be a little too, how do you say it? Not impulsive rather than, or even reactive. So, but no, I think having her there, it's okay, kind of like, it's okay to start businesses. Other people have done it, you're not the first.
Yeah.
But yeah, that for sure helped. And I think just her having an education as well, like, she's the brains of the operation. So that helped for sure.
Yeah. You guys seem to work really well together. And briefly, I want to ask about, how do you do it all? I mean, you have baby on the number 5 on the way. By the time this episode airs, baby will probably be 4 or 5 months old. So how do you juggle it all? And especially doing it all with your family. It's not like you have a business partner who's a friend who lives somewhere else, but your business partner is literally your wife and your life partner. How do you guys make all that work?
Well, it's not, first of all, it's not without its faults and its challenges. It's definitely not easy. Especially me, like I'm a pretty outgoing guy. You can probably tell that. And the one thing I loved about work, was like, I just loved being out with, with people and seeing faces and shaking hands. And, I love being out with people. So that was a challenge. I had to first kind of like reset my mindset to like, okay, I'm working from home now. I'm stuck at home, and we homeschool. So, the kids are always around, but I think what's the old,
you homeschool.
We homeschool as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's challenging. And that came from COVID. Actually, like we weren't homeschooling. And then when it was time to send them back to school, we're like, you know what? We've always kind of wanted to try it. Maybe this is what pushed us over the edge. Our third son was going into kindergarten. Everyone had to wear masks and have like these, what do you call them? Like what do you call them, Christine? Like these little sections of kids together.
Pods.
Cohorts or whatever.
Cohorts. Yes.
So we're like, that's not school. And school was fun for me growing up. Like that's not school. Seeing people behind masks, we're like, let's just try homeschooling this year kind of thing. So, but I'll just say, what is it saying? It takes a village to raise a kid or a family. And that's so true here. We live next to my in-laws. So grandma and grandpa help out a lot. They're both retired. My mom lives in the same town as well. So she's around. So we have friends who also homeschool. So we're leaning each other for expertise there. And they're entrepreneurs as well. They have their own business. So, I mean, leaning on like our network is helped a lot, and family, and our friends are our family as well. We consider them. So I think that's ultimately key, but just being organized, having a schedule, knowing when to work. It's easy, like when you're working from home, to like, mix business with whatever else at home. And I think we have an office dedicated space. Like there's certain things you can do to really separate work from home life. And we know when we're in the office, it's like, that's right. And when we're in the office, it's work. And yes, we do have fun, drink lunches and little breaks here and there, but we're in the office, it's work, and we just work. And I think having that separate space and conversation with the kids, yes, they're young, but they get it when we're working, and things sometimes go off, and you have to be flexible. Sometimes things go completely off the rails, and you have to just like, what, it's not going to be working this afternoon. We're going to go spend a bit of time with the kids, and that's okay too. You have to be okay to be able to be a little flexible sometimes when you're working from home.
Yeah. And that's what that lifestyle affords you that traditional employment doesn't. You don't have flexibility. You have a very fine window from about 6 to 9 or 10 p.m. every day to live your personal life. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, it could be you guys work in the evenings, and so you have mornings together, or you shift things day by day, or you take spontaneous afternoon trips to the park with your kids, or you can do all those things because you have the flexibility to dictate your own work schedule.
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's so many mornings where we start a bit later, but we're definitely working when their kids are in bed. It's, it's not Netflix and chill all the time. We do have to take some time for that as well, but it's often, working and working some late hours, but we know what's coming with our plans and our goals, that one day we'll have the ultimate lifestyle that we all kind of strive for. So it's fun.
I love it. I love it. You're really architecting this whole life for your family by your own design.
Yeah, not without its risk, and it's scary. So not, this is not something, this is not a movie, right? This is not something where there's always there's a guaranteed happy ending. So that's always in the back of my mind as well. So those are things, again, that I'm always thinking about, like, oh man, and that roller coaster of an entrepreneur, right? Like, you have ups and downs and peaks and valleys. Those are some of the biggest things I had to learn, is be okay with like ebbs and flows within the day-to-day of a business world, because you're some super, super high highs and some pretty low lows sometimes as well.
Yeah. And what I love about the design of your entire business side of your life is that you've really diversified. This is one of the things that financial advisors always teach you, that real estate investors will teach you: diversify. And you have your subscription box, you have your podcast, you have your consulting business, you guys have your wedding rental business. And so if one of those things imploded, you would still have the other three to carry you, and you could rebuild the other or start something new if you needed to. But you have that diversification, as opposed to when you're a traditional employee, you have one thing. And if someone, not you, but if someone who is outside of you decides to pull the plug on that one thing that you have, because it's not within your own control, you're done.
Yeah, and that was
really have to reevaluate.
For sure. And that was especially scary for me, because I'm now making, like I said, 6 figures as a cable guy, but no education. So if I get fired, I'm not finding another 6-figure job doing what I was doing. Like the glory days of that are over. As opposed to, and I always so that always scared me, because I'm like, I don't have an accounting degree where I can just go find another accounting firm. I don't have anything to fall back on, nothing. Yeah. So it was terrifying. So I'm like, I'd rather kind of, like you said, take a chance on myself, and I guess it paid off.
Yeah. And on that note, where can people find you?
Yeah, appreciate that. Thanks for asking that. When it comes to Louis and Léa, if you're expecting or a new mom or know someone who is, send them our way. We have got a ton. We've got boxes that are awesome, but there's also a ton of free resources that probably a lot of the new parents don't know. So we're always excited to point people there first. LouisandLéa.com, Louis like Louis, and Léa is Lea. It's a French Canadian names. Louis is Christine's great grandfather. Léa was my great grandmother. So we kind of just put them together, and it kind of went well. So that's where you can find us on Instagram at official Louis and Léa. I'm sure you're going to have stuff in the show notes or whatnot.
Absolutely.
And then we're always excited about our offers. We have a new monthly box when it comes to Louis and Léa. So if you're into subscription boxes and you want to like discovery and handmade stuff, all our stuff is made from small businesses, local makers, high quality, not quantity. And we have some offers that range all the time, from free boxes to right now it's a free teething bib that comes when you order your first box. And when it
And
comes to, sorry, go ahead.
on that note, though, I just want to add, I sent your box to a friend of mine who had a baby. She had her baby in November, and she loved it. Oh my gosh, she was sending me pictures of all the things for her little boy. She was just obsessed with all the quality. And she's like, this is so soft. I want to keep it for myself, but I have to give it to Brent. But she absolutely loved your box. So I highly, highly, highly recommend. It was a
Oh, I
great gift.
appreciate that. Yeah, super. Well, I really appreciate that. Thanks. And thanks for doing that. And the subscription box show, the podcast, yeah, it's very, obviously the name says it all. It's for people who are looking to start or grow their own subscription box business. So if you know anyone like that, but even entrepreneurial stuff, there are just rules that are business rules and kind of things that go across the board on e-commerce as well. So, feel free to check out our website, thesubscriptionboxshow.com.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Eric.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ray.
Hey, it's Ray again. Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, please subscribe and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, YouTube, and more. And want to be a guest on the show or know someone who has an amazing story of entrepreneurship? Apply on our website at www.chironconsulting.us/podcast.